One thing that you may have found, and if you haven't, there is this. This is a video response to Joe Rogan from an archaeologist, and she talks specifically about what we have discussed today. The name of the channel is Dig It with Raven. What I found interesting, I think she did this live because there is a live chat replay. But what I found interesting about this response, it's not long, we can watch a little bit. But what I found interesting about this response is the fact that if you look at the comments, it's really split. You've got people that love her, and you've got people that absolutely hate her. And I kind of want to see what you guys think. I think she did a good job when it comes to the presentation of the facts. And yeah, it coincides with what I shared today. Because yeah, that is if you've ever looked into those helicopter stuff and you look for the evidence and what archaeology says, that's the information. Now you can choose to believe it or not, but at least of course it's important to look it up. I would love to have her as a guest at one point because I like how she gives you a little bit of an explanation of the situation, and she shows you the stuff. Look at this. Yeah, I think she does a good job. But some people didn't like the attitude, and I can understand that. It didn't bother me. But then I decided, but let me see if it changed. Let me see if they presented new evidence that I don't know about. Because again, I've addressed ancient Egypt. There was a time in my channel where I started producing a lot of videos, particularly when I was clashing with the Afrocentrist community when it comes to ancient Egypt. But the last time I did that was a year ago. So I'm like, maybe there is new information. And by the way, that's something you should always do. And so I found this video immediately and I watched it and I noticed that it's pretty much the same stuff. She didn't present anything new, but she did show a lot more pictures than I did. So I still think it's nice to watch it. Let's go.
I cannot believe that I'm about to do this. Hi everyone, welcome back to Dig It with Raven. Today we are doing something that I have sworn off for years, but the universe has pulled me right back into this path of madness, so I've just decided to face it head on.
Right.
Today we are debunking Joe Rogan and the helicopter hieroglyphs. So this week I was scrolling my YouTube homepage, as one does, and this clip from the Joe Rogan Experience came across my feed.
Yeah.
I normally ignore all this ancient aliens stuff, but for some reason I clicked it. It was, you know what, the thumbnail got me. That's what everyone wants to say. I wanted to hear what they were going to say about the supposed helicopter hieroglyphs at Abydos. And unsurprisingly, a bunch of claims were made without anyone doing any sort of research or just basic Googling. So here I am to help you all out.
Okay.
First off, hello Joe. My name is Raven and I am an archaeologist. My qualifications are, I have a bachelor in ancient Near Eastern civilizations where I learned to read hieroglyphs, right here.
Right.
I also have 2 master's degrees that also focused on ancient Egyptian archaeology in some form or another, and I personally translated this tattoo on my arm. So I can read some hieroglyphs.
I saw people in the comments complaining about her presenting her qualifications as a flex. That's kind of silly. I mean, she's got to tell you why you should believe what she says. As long as people don't do it like, I have this qualification, so don't you dare have a different opinion. That's the part where it annoys me, but she's just presenting her qualifications. I don't have a problem with that.
I also wrote this book about lesser known ancient civilizations and cultures, but that's not relevant for today's video. Oh, and you might not have noticed, but
Shameless plug.
I did make a very brief cameo on your podcast episode with Flint Dibble. There I am. So without further ado, let's dig into the clip.
Wow, I know.
So what that means is that she was one of the experts that Flint Dibble contacted when he was preparing for his debate with Hancock.
That's what I wanted to go see. But the cool thing was the first temple I went in was what I'd seen on Ancient Aliens, where at the very top of the temple, you have one of the most famous hieroglyphs, which has a spaceship.
He's going to show the helicopter, the other thing. We'll watch it later. Let's see how she responds.
Yeah, that was the first
if
place
it's
I
not a helicopter, what a goddamn
What is it?
coincidence.
Yeah.
Okay, so right off the bat, these gentlemen are talking about a segment of hieroglyphs in the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, which is one of the oldest cities of ancient Egypt. Abydos is also extremely important to archaeologists today because it's home to many temples and multiple royal necropoli, such as el-Kab, which is a vital source of information for early pharaohs of Egypt, and it also gives us the earliest evidence of writing that we have in ancient Egypt. So it's
Cool.
a literal treasure trove archaeologically for the history of ancient Egypt and the development of the entire civilization. The Temple of Seti I, where these helicopter hieroglyphs are found, also contains an inscription known as the Abydos King List, which
Yeah.
provides Egyptologists with
Man,
the order.
look at this. Hoo-hoo, that's a lot of work right there. Shame that the pigments are gone here. Did you know that unfortunately, a lot of these images and paintings and murals, when they were found, a lot of these were found in the early 19th century. When you read the reports, and I read the letters just a couple of days ago as I was preparing for the stream, they say that the colors were as fresh as when they were painted. Unfortunately, however, as they are opened and oxygen enters, and then they start to get manipulated and touched and all of that kind of stuff and gessoed and all the situation that we can talk about what happens oftentimes, then they actually started deteriorating extremely quickly. When you look at this, you think, well, it looks like this because it's thousands of years old, so of course over the period of time. But if you read the reports, this level of deterioration actually happened in the last 2 centuries. Not always the case. But I've read reports specifically when it comes to this and the tomb, even more so, that when they opened the tomb for the first time, the tomb of Seti I, the colors were vivid.
Order of the Old Kingdom kings and is the sole source that we currently have for the names of many of the kings of the 7th and 8th dynasties. And just so we're all on the same page, Seti I was the second pharaoh of the 19th dynasty during ancient Egypt's New Kingdom. He ruled from around 12...
Did you notice that you can see the hieroglyphs are in full color? And here you still see the remains of the pigments, because when we imagine the hieroglyphs, we imagine them often like this. And then in video games and in the movies, often you see that the hieroglyphs, even though it is set in the periods that, like for instance, the New Kingdom in this case, they are always like this, bare of color. But then when you look at it, it's another one of those situations where there is polychromy in the ancient period. And it makes sense because it matches the polychromy that you have also in the classical antiquity in the Mediterranean world. Egypt is on the Mediterranean. So everything was so colorful, whether it be the Romans, whether it be the Greeks, whether it be the Egyptians, everything was bathed in multiple colors. And of course, blue being, the Egyptians were famous for their blue. So were the Greeks, by the way, before anyone tries to present again the nonsense idea where the Greeks couldn't see blue, which is insane, that the BBC as well were pushing that nonsense. The Greeks produced their own type of blue, but they also imported blue. And then the Romans had specific dyeing factories all over Italy where they were producing colors, including some types of blue, but the Egyptians could produce a specific hue that they had mastered the production of, and that we can see here. So yeah, the colors, you can still see them, and I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Now, are these now, as we look at them in this very moment, are these an exact representation one-to-one to how the colors looked back in period? According to the researchers at the University of Florence, no. And I'll tell you how they have changed as we continue this live stream.